From Pharaoh's refusal to the Red Sea. Exodus, Part 2. Let my people go. Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh and spoke the Lord's command. Let my people go, so they may worship me. They stood before the king with courage and trembling, asking only for justice and freedom. Pharaoh answered with scorn. "Who is the Lord?" he sneered, and he refused their request. Worse, he blamed the people for daring to ask and made their burdens heavier. Taskmasters pressed the Israelite workers to meet impossible quotas. Brickmakers were punished, and the people grew more exhausted and discouraged. The Israelites turned their anger toward Moses and Aaron. "You have brought trouble on us," they cried. Moses was shaken. He prayed to God and asked, "Why did you send me if the work only grows harder?" God spoke gently and firmly. He had heard the people's cries and remembered his covenant. Though the road would be hard, God would act to free them. God told Moses and Aaron to show signs before Pharaoh, signs to prove the Lord's power. Aaron's staff became a serpent and returned to a staff, and other wonders were given as proof. Even so, Pharaoh's heart hardened, and he would not let the people go. This first clash with Pharaoh shows the cost of speaking truth. Obeying God sometimes brings opposition and greater difficulty before deliverance comes. Still, God equips those he sends and keeps his promise. The call to courage and faith remains, even when the world says no. The 10 plagues of Egypt. God told Moses and Aaron to demand Israel's freedom, but Pharaoh refused. To show his power and to persuade the king, God sent a series of signs across the land of Egypt. Each sign was a warning and a call to turn to the one true God. First, the Nile turned to blood, the water became foul, and fish died, and the people could not drink from the river. Then frogs came up everywhere, into courtyards and houses, a noisy plague that showed God's control over nature. Dust became gnats, and then swarms of flies, troubling people and animals. Egypt's livestock grew sick, and many animals died, while the Israelites' flocks remained healthy. Painful sores struck men and animals, and then a fierce hailstorm beat down crops and shattered fields. Locusts followed, sweeping the land and eating what the hail had left. Thick darkness fell over Egypt for days, so deep that people could not move, while Israel kept a small place of light and calm. Through each plague, Pharaoh had chances to listen and let the people go, but his heart grew stubborn. God gave clear warnings and time to turn, yet pride kept Pharaoh in place. At last, the final judgment came. The firstborn in Egypt were taken in a single terrible night. Homes marked with the lamb's blood were passed over and spared. That last plague broke Pharaoh's resistance. He called Moses and Aaron and told Israel to leave at once. From these events came the first Passover, a solemn, thankful ordinance to remember how God spared his people and brought them out of bondage. The plagues show both God's justice against stubborn evil and his mercy toward those who trust and obey. Passover, the night God passed over Egypt. On the night before Israel left Egypt, God gave Moses a careful plan to keep his people safe. Each family was to choose a perfect lamb, roast it, and paint its blood on the doorframes of their homes. They were to eat the lamb with bitter herbs and flat, unleavened bread, ready to leave at a moment's notice. That night the Lord passed through the land. Where homes were marked with the lamb's blood, the people were spared. Where the sign was not shown, loss and mourning came to the house. Those who trusted and obeyed God were protected. Those who refused the warning suffered the consequence. At dawn, Pharaoh was desperate and gave the order, "Go, leave my land." The Israelites left in haste, carrying bread they had baked without yeast and the things Egypt had given them. God told them to remember that night every year as a lasting sign. Teach it to their children so they would never forget how God rescued them. The Passover shows us two things: God's justice against stubborn evil and His mercy toward those who trust and obey. When God gives a command, it is an act of care. Obedience can be a means of protection and a way to remember His saving work. Crossing the Red Sea. The people of Israel had just left Egypt when Pharaoh changed his mind and sent chariots and horsemen after them. Dawn found the Israelites trapped between the sea and the advancing army. Fear and anger rose among the crowd. Mothers clutched children, elders gripped staffs, and voices cried out, "Why did you bring us out here to die?" Moses stepped forward and spoke words of steady faith. "Do not be afraid. Stand firm and see the Lord's salvation." Then God told Moses to lift his staff. A strong east wind blew all night, and the waters began to pull back. A long, dry road opened through the sea, with walls of water standing like glass on either side. Families, flocks, and carts walked through the middle of the sea on dry ground. Children pointed in wonder as their footprints marked the wet sand. When Pharaoh's chariots poured into the lane, the proud army found itself in a place of judgment. Then Moses stretched out his hand again, and the waters returned with great force. The chariots and warriors were swept away. The sea closed over them, and the threat was gone. Safe on the far shore, the people bowed and sang. Moses and Miriam led a song of thanks and praise for the Lord's mighty deed. That day, the nation learned a powerful truth. When God rescues, fear turns into praise, and God's people remember His power and keep trusting His promises.